Hello, YouTube. It's Black Tiger Miner back for another video in the Black Tiger Miner channel. And this is a Kaspa update. There's lots of theories floating around about why Kaspa's down. And if you can see here, so for the number of addresses on March 20th to March 28th, it dropped. And then the next drop is April 17th to April 18th. But it looks like it's starting to come back up. So I just found this chart. So I was just looking at that in addresses greater than 1 million. So it looks like some whales are doing some of the manipulation. So that was just part of it. And I do have a video, which is kind of long. So let's check the price real quick. Looks like in the last hour, it's down 2.83%. Last 24 hours, 7.43%. Last 7 days, 22.49%. The last 80 days is still up 82.53%. In the last 90 days, it's up 330.5%. And these are the address distributions. I just found this information as well. So shrimps from 0 to 100 Kaspa is 116,000. Crabs 100 to 1,000, 55,123. Octopus is 1 to 10K. It's 60,023. Fish is 10K to 100K. So that's the category I'm in, which is 36,801. Dolphins is 100K to a million, and it's 9,270. And we'll skip down to this Aquaman, which is 1 billion to 10 billion. So somebody has a pretty big stake in Caspa. So let's check the coin market cap is saying it's down 6.19%. Not much new news on the Twitter page. This is kind of what we saw yesterday. So no new information here. And let me get to this video because it's kind of long. He has some theories about what's going on with Caspa. So give me a minute and we'll get to the video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know your theories about why Caspa is dipping. So put some theories in the comments and we can discuss or we can kind of review to see what's going on. But let's click to this video from Tactical Investing and I'll be back shortly.
So first things first, let's talk Caspa. Now, Caspa's there's a lot, and I think a lot of this has been perpetrated by Caspa specifically, because when you look at from at least a larger perspective of some of the recent popularized proof of work cryptos, specifically via GPU mining, Caspa has been primarily the leader of it. Now, Caspa, alongside of Radiant, alongside of Nexa, I would consider that most people that they're looking at more of the recent hype, more of the recent profitability would be found in one. People would find these three in their top five, or at least in their top 10, no doubt, as far as GPU mineable cryptos. I'd say 90% of people would have them in their top five. Especially Caspa and especially the likes of Radiant, especially since Radiant is very profitable to mine based on the recent price action. But Caspa, in many ways, the way that things that react to when you see something like Bitcoin dump, you're going to see altcoins dump similarly to Bitcoin. It's a very much a leader in the crypto space, and other altcoins are going to react oftentimes alongside of what the leader is doing. And so when you look at GPU mineable cryptos, in my opinion, Caspa is the leader. And when Caspa goes down, or there's some FUD, or there's some concern, or there's some fear about Caspa, you're going to see that perpetrated through other proof of work cryptos, and oftentimes at a higher rate than what would happen with Caspa. So when you look at the fact that Caspa, as of today, in the last 24 hours, is down about 6%, it makes sense as to why Radiant would be down double that and Nexa slightly over about 2.5 times, right? But when you look at the large picture and you look at the big view of all of this, the amount that Kaspa dropping from up here, if you will, at 3.5 cents down to 3 cents would be the same as if you were looking at the chart right here and Kaspa went from here all the way to about here. So in large scheme of things, right? You zoom in and you're like, oh my goodness, Kaspa went from 1.4 down to 1 cent. This is the end of the world. And then you zoom out and you start to realize that this little change right here, this little debacle, if you will, going down half a percentage is nothing compared to what happened shortly after, right? And so realize that oftentimes when there's massive run-ups, you're going to have corrections. And that's what we're probably seeing in projects such as Radiant and the likes of Nexa. The biggest thing is behind these two, they're much, much smaller, significantly smaller as far as market cap compared to the likes of Caspa. I mean, 32 million and 52 million is far less than the $500 million market cap of Caspa. And I think that's probably why you're seeing with the over dramatic reaction and overcorrection by Radiant and Nexa. But what's caused this spook and this fear to happen to Caspa in the first place? Outside of the fact that, well, Bitcoin is down today either way, down about 3%. So it kind of makes sense that Caspa would be down just a little bit. But having seen Caspa outperform Bitcoin in the last 6 months, you would consider that maybe it would follow a different trajectory. There's a few things that I think are leading towards the reason as to why there's FUD about Caspa. And I wouldn't consider their upgrade to Rust to be FUD, and more or less is probably a lot of build up to hype. It's happened, and now there's a selling off of the news. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It's a historical trend that oftentimes happens when news gets released. When Ethereum moved to proof of stake, there was a lot of pump up to that and then a massive sell off post that. So I think something similar is going to happen with Caspa as it is already happening. Now, in addition to that, there's been a lot of fear as far as ASICs coming onto Caspa and a lot of GPU miners dumping their CAS tokens or moving off of mining Caspa because, well, by this point, they realize that if ASICs take over Caspa, they need to go ahead and start mining something else because for those of you who remember when the merge happened with Ethereum, those who started spec mining or mining other alts, eventually those alts started pumping much faster while the ongoing most profitable crypto at that point, which was Ethereum to mine, started dumping. And so I think what you're starting to see, and I've seen this in the comments already, some people are already switching off of Caspa to mine something else due to just kind of preparing themselves if these are real. There's been a lot of YouTubers who have talked about this. Supposedly, um, what we've seen is Red Panda. What it looks like, Red Panda is going to be getting one of these miners to test out to prove its validity. I did talk to Coastal Crypto, and they said that when they talked to Ice River, that Ice River had absolutely zero interest in working with them and did not want to consider anyone for a distribution partner. That doesn't really mean anything a whole lot, but having seen that Coastal Crypto has worked as a distribution partner for the K10, for the multi-miner M2, for other Kaspa miners, FPGA miners, you would think that that this would be a perfect kind of addition to their distribution. But Ice River was adamant about not wanting anything to do with Coastal Crypto, which when I talked to Coastal Crypto about it, they said that that kind of was puzzling to them, but I'll just leave it at that. So that said, this in and of itself, ASICs coming into Caspa has caused a lot of concern, especially due to the amount of CAS that these ASICs theoretically mine and are able to dump directly onto the markets. Now, if this is true and these have actually been mining, have the individuals who or the company that's designed these and sold these to individuals, have they been dumping the Caspa tokens that they've been mining? Because if you remember in yesterday's video, we talked about the fact that these mine about $1,200 worth of Caspa per day, which is a ridiculous amount of Caspa tokens and a ridiculous amount of potential sell pressure onto the ecosystem around the same time that there's a sell off the news of the transition to Rust. So I think it's a lot of things coming together that have really added fuel to the fire, if you will, for the current appeal to Kaspa. It once was a savior, but now it's really not. And with the, if it remains on the K heavy hash algorithm, there's a concern for a lot of GPU miners. Now, the thing is, there's already, and I briefly touched this on this in yesterday's video, that there's already mining pools that are pleading with the community and the developers of Kaspa to move Kaspa to a non-ASIC mineable algorithm, or something that would make it very, very difficult for ASICs to mine on it. Whether or not that would actually come to fruition is an unknown, but I think this is kind of what's causing for a lot of people freaking out that Kaspa is dumping. Just zoom out a little bit and see how far Kaspa has come in retrospect to where it was 6 months ago, a year ago. This has returned people 10 times over their initial investments if they started mining it or spec mining it when Ethereum moved to proof of stake. And I think this is what's happening more than likely with the likes of Radiant, which I've talked about on the channel, and the likes of Nexa. Both of these, Nexa specifically, having talked about Nexa very early on, has done extremely well for a lot of people. And I did a video on Radiant not too long ago. So feel free to check it out as well. But in the end, when you look at the overall mining pool stats, you can see Kaspa is still right there as far as the overall emissions. In fact, it's now fallen behind the likes of Litecoin. At one point, the K heavy hash was more, the emissions was higher for Kaspa than it was with Litecoin, which is extremely impressive. But that has gone down as well. The overall value of the token has gone down. So that does make sense. You can see it's down about 18% in the last 7 days, while the overall difficulty has increased dramatically. So you're seeing something like this, and it kind of goes to show you why maybe this would be happening. But you see the likes of something like Radiant being up 103% over the last 7 days, going through a slight correction, having a massive amounts of emissions and a network increase as far as difficulty of 133%. So I don't see actually Nexa on this list, but you can see some of the top 10 most profitable mining cryptos as far as the ones that pay out to users the most are Radiant and Kaspa. So to see a reaction in maybe these two, as people would consider them leaders, would cause a shockwave, if you will, across the rest of the proof of work cryptos that are mineable. So via GPU specifically. So I think this goes to show you, when it comes to Kaspa, I don't, everyone's going to have an opinion as to whether Kaspa and GPU mining is done forever. I don't know if it's done forever. I think, like I mentioned in yesterday's video, if this is real and this is true, you're going to see a very, very large saturation. But to a certain extent, many would consider Kaspa to become the new Ethereum Classic, where it's primarily more profitable with an ASIC since they're more efficient, more profitable, versus something that's GPU mineable. Remember when the E9s came out, even though came out a little too late for Bitmain, but when those came out, those were extreme. They blew GPUs out of the water. And I think something similar could happen to the likes of Kaspa. So only really time will tell as to whether this is real and whether the overall impact of the network hash rate is going to be truly realized by ASICs coming online or not. It looks like from some of the numbers that about 300 terahash has been added from recently. And this overall trend, upward trend, I don't think came from the likes of um, GPUs. That I don't think this all came you or specifically, seeing this increase, okay, that makes sense. But seeing it go from in the course of just about 10 days, 7 days, doubling in hash rate, I think is a little bit wild. So I think that primarily, if it is true and then these are real ASICs, then that possibly could be something that is definitely going to impact the future of Caspa. Because I think Caspa is now dead? I don't. I think Caspa is going to continue to grow. But either way, I think GPUs are going to have to start getting comfortable with mining and fighting over the reward with ASICs, because whether it's Ice River that comes out with the ASIC or someone like Goldshell or someone like Bitmain, eventually this was the future for Caspa. So you kind of have to accept what is the inevitable of the ecosystem and look for more development and fundamental growth for Caspa to really provide the value long term. That's at least my opinion. I didn't want to go all in and crazy on this
So that was his interpretation of the price slip, I guess, or the dip for Kaspa mining. So I'm not sure 100% yet. As he says, I guess time will tell. So we'll keep tracking and see if there's any changes or updates. And if you can still see, looks like it's still up and down. We're at 0.0266. So let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support. And let me know if there is a new or if you have any other GPU mining coins that you're researching or specking on. If not, happy Tuesday. And let's get back to the money, guys.